For more than 25 years, I led a comfortable life filled with joy and peace, surrounded by loved ones, my husband, and our two children. We settled in a cozy and picturesque small town, which was literally surrounded by greenery with well-kept streets, where each house seemed to tell its own story. Our house was a real gem, spacious, with high ceilings, large windows letting in generous afternoon sun, and a beautifully landscaped garden where flowers bloomed in the most vibrant colors in the spring. This house was not just a place to live, it became for us a warm family nest, filled with memories, children's laughter, and quiet family evenings by the fireplace. My husband's job was successful enough that I could afford not to work and devote myself entirely to family and home comfort. However, trying to be useful outside the walls of the house, I actively participated in the life of our community. I was enthusiastically involved in the affairs of the church, helping to organize events, supporting parishioners in difficult moments, and even decorating the hall for the holidays. One of my favorite jobs was volunteering in a small but cozy charity shop located on the main street of the city. This store, with windows decorated with flowers or themed displays, was not just a place where things were sold, but a kind of social center where people shared stories, joys, and worries. Life flowed smoothly, filled with small but important details. The noise of children playing in the garden, the smell of fresh baked goods in the morning, conversations with neighbors at the gate, or participation in city holidays that united all the residents of our small but friendly town. I always thought my husband and I had a good sex life, but like any long-term marriage, the frequency of intimacy decreased over time. However, a couple of years ago, Mike, my husband, became more passionate when we had sex. I noticed that this usually happened after some kind of formal dinner, which I attributed to alcohol, or it bothered me after a visit from my friend Victoria. Victoria and I have been friends for many years since school. After marriage, she went to live in another city with her husband, a banker, and we lost contact for more than 15 years. 4 years ago, she went through a difficult divorce and returned to our city. Since then, we have become close friends again. We meet for coffee twice a week, sometimes at my house, sometimes at hers. Despite our similarities, Victoria and I are very different. I don't like the word conservative, but I have to admit that it's about me. I'm 46 and I look good for my age. I watch my diet, although I can't call myself a fitness fanatic. I have shoulder-length blonde hair, 30-60 breasts, a slim waist, and what I call mother hips. Yes, my butt is not exactly small after all. I have two children and am over 40, but it is far from fat. Victoria, although a brunette, could be my double, except that I hide my body, and she emphasizes it. Don't get me wrong, but after the divorce, she decided to start living in a new way, discovering aspects of life that may have previously been inaccessible to her or suppressed. She chose the path of brightness and freedom, enjoying every opportunity to attract attention. She loves to show off her breasts, emphasizing them with deep necklines, and boldly wears short skirts that reveal her slender legs. Her love for high heels is not just a choice of shoes, but rather a symbol of her self-confidence. She knows how to wear them as if she is floating above the ground, and her every step is filled with effortless grace. She enjoys the admiring glances she attracts and seems to bask in this feeling. I'm completely different. My style doesn't overlap with hers at all. I prefer formal pantsuits that fit perfectly, emphasizing neatness and composure. I like long skirts that modestly cover the legs, but at the same time elegantly emphasize the line of the figure. My dark blouses, always buttoned up, create a sense of restraint, and their minimalist cut reflects my love of classics. I almost never go without comfortable flat shoes that make me feel confident and don't distract me. There is no hidden meaning in this, it's just my essence, my way of expressing myself. I don't strive for spectacular images and don't chase other people's attention. My style is a reflection of inner comfort and harmony. It just so happened that our paths and tastes diverged greatly, but this does not make us opposites in spirit. It is only a difference in the choice that each of us made for ourselves. Mike began coming home often for lunch, which was nice. However, this happened most often on the days when I had Victoria. If she wasn't there, He usually left early. This started to worry me. Then I noticed that in the evenings after her visits, he became especially agitated. I began to suspect something was wrong. One day, he came home while Victoria and I were sitting in the kitchen drinking a cup of coffee. He was being his usual polite self until he noticed that one of Victoria's bags was from a lingerie store. "Are you spoiling yourself again, Vicky? Anything interesting this time?" he asked. "There is no law prohibiting a woman from wanting to feel good, right?" she answered with a slight challenge. "Of course not. With your sense of style, I'm sure it's something stunning," he teased. "Oh, so? So you're looking carefully," she answered in the same spirit. "How can you not look when everything is in sight and looks great? Was I in the room or not? What the hell is this?" My husband was openly flirting with my best friend right in front of me. My forced smile began to hurt, but I could hardly hold it. "Do you want to watch?" Victoria asked. "Bitch," I thought. Without waiting for an answer, she took a set of underwear on a hanger from her bag. It was floral with lace trim. The panties turned out to be thongs with a thin lace stripe on the back. "This is my favorite," Victoria said, and pulled out a transparent bodysuit with lace details. I could have sworn Mike nearly choked. His face flushed, and his forced smile now looked very uncertain. The next half hour passed without much event, and Victoria said goodbye. I walked her to the door. I needed to say something, but I didn't want to get angry, so I just kissed her on the cheek and jokingly apologized for Mike's behavior. "Oh, don't be stupid," she replied. "It was fun." "Did you see his face when I showed him the bodysuit?" This immediately calmed him down. "Ha. I'll call you later." And with these words, she left. Maybe she was right, I thought. Maybe Mike was just overreacting, and she was just embarrassing him. I returned to the kitchen, collected the cups, and went to the sink to wash them. Suddenly, I felt Mike behind me. It wasn't like Mike at all. We haven't had sex outside the bedroom in years. Later, as I was drying my hair after a shower, Mike came up to me and kissed me. "I don't know where that came from, honey, but thank you," he said with a boyish smile. I wasn't sure if I wanted to know the answer, but I asked anyway. "Mike, who did you make love with in the kitchen?" "What?" He looked shocked. "I never swear, but now I can't restrain myself." "You only come home when Victoria is here. You always get horny after her visits. And today you flirted with her as if I wasn't in the room. So tell me who you had sex with downstairs." I was shaking with anger. This conversation started calmly, but in the end, I realized that this angered me much more than I thought. Mike looked like a deer in headlights. He stood with his mouth open, and I saw shame in his eyes. Finally, he sat down next to me and whispered something unintelligible. "What?" I asked again. He looked into my eyes, took my hands, and said, "Nylons." I was puzzled, but over the next hour, he explained everything to me. He told me that he used to be most turned on by feet, or more specifically by nylon. He used to be distracted by looking at pictures of nylons and pantyhose in his mother's catalogs. He explained that it was primarily a touch, but one glance was enough. He told me he liked stockings, but he preferred pantyhose, and it was even sexier, and there were no panties. He explained that since I never wore them, it sort of went away, it wasn't a problem. But then, when Victoria came back into my life, it came up again. I didn't notice, but yes, Victoria always wore stockings. I just remember she always wore skirts. I never thought about nylons. He said he liked looking at her legs because of the nylon, not because it was her, which I had my doubts about. But then when he confirmed it by telling me about the evenings we went to functions, and all the ladies were dressed in dresses, and cocktail dresses with nylon, it would drive him crazy. I believed him. I kissed him, and the two of us lay on the bed and just held each other until our son came home from school. At that moment, I vowed that I would change, and suddenly I began to worry about this thought. Since that day, my husband Mike told me about his passion for stockings. A change has occurred in me. I'm not saying it was a bad change. I had fun, but it was like I became someone else. It's best I explain from the beginning. So I was preparing dinner. My son Daniel was in Mike's office chatting with him about the upcoming rugby match. He was playing with his school team. The kitchen radio was tuned to Radio 2, and everything seemed normal. No, it was not normal. I couldn't get the image of nylon out of my head. Tights, stockings, bodysuits, just the thought of them made me dizzy. I sat alone on the edge of the bed for a while, processing Mike's revelation. He said that his fascination with nylon began in his youth, but returned again after my best friend Victoria unexpectedly returned to my life 15 years later. I tried to understand myself. What did this mean for us? Will this change anything? And what exactly was it about nylon, sight, or the fact that it emphasizes the legs? Or maybe it's all about sensations. Was it a feeling? After all, I wore stockings maybe 2 or 3 times a year. When did he have time to notice this? From these thoughts, I got up and went to the kitchen to somehow distract myself. But I couldn't concentrate. Questions swirled in my head. Okay, I thought, it's time to talk to someone who will understand me. I dialed Victoria's number. Hello, dear. How can I help? Victoria, as always, answered with a smile. She knew it was me. Her phone always identified my number. Hello, Vicky. Are you free today? I need to talk to someone, and maybe have a glass of wine. Certainly, everything is fine. Did something happen? Is it because of that flirtation with Mike from earlier? You understand, it was just a joke. No, it's okay. I just want to talk it out and take a little break. Understood. I already have a couple of bottles chilling in my refrigerator. Come when you can. Thank you, dear. I'll come after 8. When I hung up the phone, I felt relieved. At least you can talk to Victoria about everything. The conversation with Victoria has already calmed me down a little. I hung up and went back to the sink to peel the potatoes. Looking out the window, I saw Mr. Windsor, who was still sitting in his greenhouse. I wonder if he likes tights, a thought flashed. Oh my God, pull yourself together. The remaining time until 8 o'clock passed as usual, although Mike was unusually affectionate. It felt good, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Every time we passed each other, he would kiss me or hug me. I can get used to this, I thought. I took a shower and changed into jeans and a t-shirt. After all, I was just going to Victoria. Mike was a little surprised when I said I was leaving. He replied that he had an early rise tomorrow and would most likely go to bed before I returned. Victoria met me at the door with a glass of wine already filled. It's like she reads minds. We settled down on the couch and started chatting. It always seemed surprising to me that, despite our frequent coffee meetings, we always have something to talk about. Although I only saw her during the day today, the conversation was easy and relaxed. But soon I couldn't stand it and told her everything. I asked not to interrupt and just let me speak. I told her about Mike's confession, how I felt, and even how excited I felt thinking about it all. When I finished, Victoria looked at me silently for several seconds, and then said, "Damn it, darling." I felt my face turn red. She's right, this is all wrong, I thought. I didn't know Mike had that streak in him, she continued. What? I almost dropped my glass in surprise. He's a real find, she laughed. Do you think this is good? I asked. Of course. I already thought that you only do this under the covers and with the lights off. I was too stunned to respond, so I just continued listening. So, does that mean he's delighted with the tights? Well, that explains a lot. I noticed how he looked at my legs, but that's what legs are for, right? Nobody wears skirts to show their elbows, she said with a grin. I must admit, your husband suddenly became even more sexy in my eyes. If I had known that he was so interested in this, she winked and laughed. Victoria, he is married. On me if you forgot, I said sharply. Yes, I'm joking. But you know, such weaknesses in men, these are so many opportunities for fun. I was lost. I came here looking for answers, but all I got was conflicting signals. Darling, you are so naive, it's even cute. You clearly got married too young. I know you're lucky, but sometimes I think you should have met him 5 or 10 years later. Look at me, for example. I wear what I wear because I want people to think I look beautiful. And when you look so good that people start wanting you, You gain such power over them that it's just intoxicating. For example, when a man has a thing for tights, show him some nylon, and he's yours. Just think what kind of power this is, I'm telling you. Her words made sense, very much so. Moreover, I felt excited again. Real excitement. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to continue the conversation. We continued to chat like this until the bottle of wine ran out and Victoria said, I have an idea. I'll show you how hot it is to have that kind of power over a man. She picked up the phone and dialed the number of the taxi service she usually used. Hello, could you send one of your drivers to deliver a couple of bottles of wine? Yes, that's right, Victoria Andrews at Nelson's Park. Thanks a lot. What was she up to? Honey, I need to go upstairs. If the car arrives before I get down, call me, but don't open the door. She went to her bedroom. I sat with my head buzzing from everything I had heard and the bottle of wine I had drunk. I didn't plan to stay long, but it had been a long time since I last had such a good time. 10 minutes later, Victoria returned, and she looked stunning. The first thing I noticed was her legs. She was wearing translucent black tights and a white miniskirt. The skirt was a good 5 inches above the knees, and on her feet were black patent leather shoes with 4-inch heels. She wore a waist-length white jacket that matched the skirt perfectly, and it was buttoned low. Underneath was a sheer nylon top that perfectly accentuated her ample cleavage. Her outfit could be called as close to provocative as possible without crossing that line. My jaw must have dropped because Victoria just looked at me and said, Is she really that good? Before I could say anything, the doorbell rang. You stay here. Through the mirror in the corridor, you will see everything. Just watch and learn, honey. She left the room, and I stood up and realized that she was right. I had an excellent view through the mirror. I saw Victoria drop her purse on the floor just before she walked up to the door and then opened it. The taxi driver was an older man, about 50 years old, with the build of a man who spends all day sitting and snacking on the go. Victoria was incredibly cheerful and immediately struck up a conversation with him. I don't think they knew each other, but it was clear from the very beginning that he wanted to meet. His face immediately flushed red, and he could not take his eyes off her. She turned away from him, giving him the opportunity to stealthily look at her figure, and he did not miss a single chance. It was amazing nothing much seemed to be happening, but it was clear that she was completely in control of the situation and could make him jump through hoops if she wanted. He finally handed her 2 bottles of wine, and she turned to pick up the purse she had dropped earlier. Having done this, she looked in the mirror and winked at me. Bending over for her bag, she did so from her waist, giving the taxi driver a full view of her butt. When I looked at the taxi driver, I noticed how he exhaled. Now I started to blush. Finally, Victoria straightened up, straightened her skirt, and turned to him, beaming with a smile. She thanked him, handed him the money, and took the business card he offered her. "Any time, madam, whatever you need," he said and left. "Damn it," Victoria laughed, returning to the room. She looked at me with concern and asked, "Oh my God, girl, are you okay? Your whole face is red." "No wonder," I replied. We both burst out laughing. Victoria returned to her seat, kicking off her shoes. You see, complete power. She was right, and she looked truly amazing. She tucked her legs under her to sit more comfortably, and the skirt almost disappeared. Now it looked more like a wide white belt that barely covered her dignity. I couldn't take my eyes off her, which didn't go unnoticed. "Sexy, isn't it?" I heard, which brought me back from a state of complete hypnosis. "What? Sorry," I muttered. "You can't take your eyes off me, darling. Don't tell me you're changing orientation. All these years and how much fun we could have had," she laughed. She was teasing me again, I knew it, but was she really? "Okay, wait until you see the whole outfit in full." Victoria stood up. A sly light flashed in her eyes, and she began to undress. "Wow, what are you doing?" I asked. "Don't worry, dear, I'll just show you my power outfit," she laughed. In fact, she hadn't stopped laughing since the man left. It was all just for fun. I started to relax again. Victoria unbuttoned her jacket, and I looked in amazement. I wanted to playfully hum an old dance tune, but I was too excited and didn't want to lighten the atmosphere too much. Before taking off her jacket, she said, "Remember, I'm wearing very little under this." I threw a pillow at her. She took off her jacket and showed off an incredible nylon top with a lace floral pattern. Without interruption, she unfolded the skirt so that the clasp was in front and was more convenient. She unfastened it and let it fall to the floor. Wow, Victoria stood in front of me in a Wonder Woman pose, feet shoulder width apart, hands on hips, wearing the sexiest outfit I've ever seen. It turned out to be not just a top, but a one-piece bodysuit. I had to take a sip of wine. My mouth was so dry. "So good?" she asked. She made a very slow and deliberate turn. She was wearing a black thong that showed off her gorgeous ass, which was completely covered in nylon. "Come on, touch it," she said. "Nothing like that, just feel how cool it is." I quietly returned to my place. Victoria cleared her throat. "Damn, honey, we both need to have sex ASAP." We both laughed nervously, and Victoria went to change into something safer. For 10 minutes, I sat staring at the switched-off TV, thoughts swirling in my head. When Victoria returned, she was wearing a pink top and robe. "Go upstairs, honey. I left some clothes for you. I don't want to get too carried away, but I think you're in the same situation as me." I didn't argue. I was so glad that Victoria and I were still close, and that this moment didn't ruin our friendship. I thanked her and headed to her bedroom. On the bed lay a cute gray skirt, a dainty white thong, and a new pair of smoky gray tights. I realized that everything would be fine with us. I carefully put on the thong, first sliding it over my feet and then pulling it up my thighs, making sure it rested comfortably between my buttocks. A quick glance in the mirror showed that they were not hiding anything. I even thought that my butt looked a little bigger in them than usual, but that wasn't in a bad way. I liked it. The tights were incredibly soft and luxurious. I pulled them on slowly so as not to damage the material. She smoothed them down her toes first, then her ankles, then up her calves and onto her thighs, until she finally pulled them over her curvy hips and thighs. It was an amazing feeling. I've worn tights before, but only for practical reasons. But now it was completely different. I stood in front of the mirror, admiring myself. I really liked them. "Damn it, girl, stop," I thought. I just changed my clothes. I put the skirt on, and it came up about an inch above the knee, probably one of Victoria's day skirts. In the evening, she usually chooses a couple of inches shorter. I went to the mirror again. Damn, I looked great. Moreover, I felt great. She also left me a very cute white bra with lots of detail. Victoria and I have the same breast size, but I usually try to hide mine, and she does the opposite. This bra lifted my breasts, making them more expressive. Looking in the mirror, I felt as if I was offering it to anyone who would accept it. The blouse Victoria chose for me was simple, but hugged my figure well. There was no doubt what form was hidden under these clothes. I looked great. When I returned to the living room, Victoria greeted me with whistles and playful cheers. She already had a slightly cloudy look, and she was clearly tipsy. "Thank you, dear," I answered, staggering, making an awkward turn in place. I was drunker than I thought. Victoria leaned forward with a bottle of wine to fill my glass. "Just one more, dear. It's already much later than I planned to stay." "Well, how do you feel?" she asked. "Simply amazing, so soft," I answered. "That's because you're wearing a quality item, my dear. These tights cost around 20 pounds a pair." "What? I usually buy a pack of 5 for half that price." I was surprised, but I couldn't help but admit that they were truly of excellent quality. "Well, to be honest, honey, it doesn't matter to the man looking at you, but I always think it's better to feel as sexy as you look." After a few more glasses of wine, I told Victoria it was time to call a taxi. Pretending to be offended, she went into the kitchen and returned a couple of minutes later with a filled glass. "The taxi will be there in 10 minutes, she announced. I leaned forward to pick up my sneakers. "Where are you going with them?" "These are the only shoes I bought, dear." "Not with tights, you won't wear them." I want you to look elegant, not cheap. I'll bring you a pair of shoes. Victoria went into the hallway and returned with cute gray patent leather shoes with 3-inch heels. I have higher ones, but I don't want you to break my heels in your sober state, she laughed. I put on the shoes, but they were too big. Sorry, dear, everything is this size. Besides, you're not going to dance, Victoria laughed. I felt a full foot taller, a little unsteady, but incredibly good. Looking at my feet in the new shoes, I was delighted with how they emphasized my posture, causing my calf muscles to tighten. The only problem was that I kept slipping out of my shoes. But as Victoria said, I just needed to get to a taxi. When I heard a car horn outside, I put on my coat and turned to Victoria. Thank you very much, dear. I really needed it and had a great time. Victoria stepped forward, hugged me tightly, and kissed me on the lips. It wasn't anything sexual, just very cozy, and I knew I'd never find a better friend than her. You're welcome, honey. I'm always there, she said. Thank you, I replied. When I approached the door, Victoria added, You look great. Now you have to pass another test. She winked at me, and I thought she meant walking in heels from her house to her car. But when I opened the door, I understood what she was talking about. The taxi driver turned out to be the same man who delivered the wine to us. I turned around and saw Victoria leaning forward with a huge smile. I laughed and blew her a kiss. I walked to the taxi, trying to look confident in my new outfit and not too drunk. Looking back now, I realized that the 3-inch heels, big shoes, and attempts to keep a sober gait had me swaying my hips like the pendulum of a crazy cartoon clock. I always sit in the back seat of taxis, but with this newfound sense of confidence, I headed straight for the front door. When I arrived, the driver got out and opened it for me. I had never opened a door before, and I thought he was just being polite. However, I quickly realized that he might have other motives when I felt his palm on my butt. It was more of a slight directional gesture, but it was obvious that he was going to take advantage of every chance. I sat down, and my skirt immediately rode up my legs so much that the dark part of my tights became visible. I tried to adjust it, and in doing so, one of the shoes fell off my feet onto the sidewalk. The taxi driver bent down to pick it up, his big belly clearly getting in his way. While he did this, I took a deep breath, trying to come to my senses. Here, miss, I reached out to take the shoe, but he was already reaching for my foot. He very carefully lifted my leg by the ankle and brought it closer to him. I was surprised by the gentleness of his touch, especially since I could feel the roughness of his skin through the nylon. However, the situation did not seem entirely appropriate to me. My legs were wide apart, and I noticed how his gaze lingered on them. I tensed my legs slightly, forcing him to look me in the face. His face flushed, he coughed, and continued putting on his shoe. When he finished, I quickly put my foot up and closed the door. I was annoyed and embarrassed, but my emotions were much more complex than just anger. When the driver took his seat again, I waved goodbye to Victoria. She blew me a kiss and made a gesture suggesting that I call. Girls, are you having fun tonight? His voice distracted me from my thoughts. Sorry, what? I answered automatically. You and Victoria, did you have fun? He clarified. We just stayed home and had a few drinks. Do you know Victoria? I asked in surprise. Oh, all the guys know Victoria. She often uses our services. We all love it when she calls. This comment made me wary, but I decided not to go deeper into the conversation. The driver kept asking questions and making notes about my outfit, which made me irritated. His words and behavior became increasingly strange, and I tried not to meet his gaze. My thoughts returned to how I looked. My skirt had ridden up too high, and I suddenly realized that I looked revealing. Fixing this right now seemed awkward to me, especially under his gaze. Soon he spoke again, talking about his clothing preferences. His tone became almost familiar, and it reminded me of a conversation I had with my husband a few hours earlier. I had a strange feeling that his interest was not just in small talk. The conversation became more and more personal and gave me mixed emotions. As we pulled into the parking lot, I realized the route had deviated from my house. The driver answered my questions evasively, saying that he just wanted to find a quiet place to rest. I felt uncomfortable, but didn't know how to get out of the situation. After some time, we continued our journey. Returning home, I mentally replayed the events of the evening. When we stopped at my house, the driver said, "No toll," and handed me my shoe. His words sounded with a tinge of irony, but I didn't answer. When I entered home, I discovered that one shoe was still left somewhere behind. This evening was strange, vague, and left me with a lot of questions for myself. When Mike told me about his passion for nylon, I didn't know how to react. It was unexpected and strange, but thinking about it, I realized, over the years of marriage, I almost stopped thinking that my husband might want something unusual, beyond the usual. Perhaps it's my own fault that he kept it to himself for so many years. I decided to try something new, not so much for Mike's sake, but for the sake of both of us. Our marriage, like many others, began to seem predictable over the years. We began to live out of habit, and then suddenly a whole unknown world opened up that could bring us closer, and I couldn't miss this chance. At first I was embarrassed. I have never considered myself sexy, rather a conservative woman who avoids unnecessary attention to her figure. But that evening, trying on the tights that Victoria gave me, I felt different. The soft fabric gliding over my skin accentuated my legs, making them look longer and slimmer. The skirt, a little shorter than the one I was used to wearing, seemed to add courage to me. I looked in the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, I saw not just a wife and mother, but a woman who could be desirable. When I walked into the bedroom with a new look, Mike couldn't take his eyes off me. His look, full of surprise and admiration, was probably the most sincere in all our years together. This gave me confidence. We didn't speak again that night. Words were unnecessary. Everything he wanted to say was read in his touch. From that moment on, a lot has changed in our marriage. We began to openly discuss our desires, talk about what we like, or, conversely, don't like. I didn't expect that a simple pair of tights could take us back to a time when our relationship was filled with passion and excitement. I realized that I could be not only a caring wife for Mike, but also a woman who excites him to the point of trembling. My confidence grew. I started paying more attention to my wardrobe, choosing clothes that flattered my curves without being revealing. Tights and stockings have become an integral part of my outfits. Mike noticed this, and his reaction to little things like that made me happy every time. He again began coming home for lunch, giving me compliments and being affectionate, as in the early years of our marriage. However, my changes were not limited to my appearance. I started to feel different. It was a strange but pleasant feeling of power over the situation. I used to think that only Victoria could make men turn around after her, but now I realize that it's not just about the outfits. It's about the confidence that comes from within when you start to see yourself differently. Victoria became my mentor in this new world for me. She taught me not to be afraid of my sexuality, to use it to strengthen relationships and enjoy life. Sometimes her advice was too bold for me, but her support was priceless. It was thanks to her that I learned to laugh at situations that would previously have baffled me. Mike and I were on our second honeymoon. We started experimenting not only in the bedroom, but also outside it. This included romantic dinners, unexpected surprises, and even spontaneous weekends alone with each other. Mike admitted that he felt like the happiest man in the world, and I believed him because I felt the same way. Of course, there were difficult moments. Sometimes I found myself feeling jealous, especially when Mike talked about Victoria. But I learned to trust him and myself. We were a team, and I knew that everything we did would strengthen our bond. I now realize that Mike's recognition was a gift to us. Not only has it revitalized our marriage, but it has also helped me rediscover myself. I became stronger, more confident, and happier. Our relationship has reached a new level where there is a place not only for love and respect, but also for passion, which seemed to be lost forever. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one. Click to the next one.